Hello fellow mutants, welcome back to another video, and apparently, according to Screen Rant, Pattinson's Batman can replace one key arrow for his feet. So that's how we read. I think we shall. Let's do this. The Batman's universe would benefit from replicating one crucial arrow first trick that started it with Arrow. Released 10 years apart, the Batman and Arrow Season 1 shared a lot of similarities. Two DC properties focus on superhero vigilantes with no superpowers. Both Arrow and the Batman borrowed a lot from the noir, realistic take on superheroes that has set the tone for some of DC and Marvel's most successful movies of the past decade. The realistic take on the DC characters worked well for Arrow and the Batman, but the former would later find the perfect balance between Green Arrow's usual realism of what a larger DC universe asks for. Now that Batman has become one of the most successful and well-received DC movies in years, it will be interesting to see how the newly formed DC studios will manage two different movie franchises, the DCU and the Batman's universe. Even if Matt Reeves' Batman franchise doesn't lead into a new DC universe, Batman's mythos is large enough to sustain a cinematic universe by itself. It is at the same time the possibility for an alternate DC universe building from the widely praised Batman movie cannot be ruled out. However, neither of those scenarios can work if the Batman universe doesn't evolve into a more fantastical world, something that Arrow did perfectly years ago. The Batman's realism can play against the franchise. I think it can go forward, but let's see what they say. Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Justice League audience got to see Batman's interacting with the larger, more fantastical DC universe, which was a first for Batman the movies. Matt Reeves' The Batman, which began development once it was clear that Ben Affleck's solo Batman movie would not happen, went to a completely different direction and brought Batman back to its detective roots. The Batman was closer to Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy than it was to Zack Snyder's Justice League's franchise, and it brought from more grounded Batman stories, such as Year One and The Long Halloween. The result was a modern reincarnation of Batman and his iconic rogues gallery. The Batman takes on the Dark Knight and his villains worked for the most part and set up an exciting series of Batman films. However, considering how large the Batman lore is in the comics, limiting the characters to a sense of realism can play against the Batman universe. Batman is more than realism, and some of the best Batman comic book stories involve sci-fi, magic, and even elements of horror. Even without considering Superman, Wonder Woman, and the Justice League, a large part of Batman's mythos only makes sense if plays in more of a fantastic world. In other words, limiting the Batman's universe to its realism would reduce the franchise potential. Okay. I can kind of see where they're coming from that, but I think it can work for, sure, I would love to see, an incarnation of Clayface. Um, but I think the realism can work for, um, the, the Batman's version of Batman. So let's read what Arrow was released. Let's read this next part, which is titled Arrow was realistic as Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy initially. Yeah, maybe in the first two seasons. It stopped being quote unquote realistic in season 3. But let's read. Arrow premiered in 2012, right as The Dark Knight Rises concluded what can be considered one of the most influential trilogies of all time, Nolan's Dark Knight films. Starting with Batman Begins, but mainly after The Dark Knight, the idea that superheroes could be incorporated into more mature stories similar to what some comic book authors had already done inspired both DC and Marvel to rethink their live action productions. Even non superhero franchises were inspired by The Dark Knight and Nolan's realism, to the point it would be no exaggeration to say the Dark Knight trilogy, along with the MCU, shaped the past decade of superhero movies and shows. Yeah, that's true. It was no different for Arrow. A Green Arrow TV show would naturally be more realistic than Smallville, yet Arrow Season 1 made his Batman Begins inspiration very clear. From Oliver Queen trying to save his city one mission at a time to the fight sequences, Arrow Season 1 was as realistic as a Green Arrow show could be. Comparison between Arrow Season 1 and Batman Begins was unavoidable, but the realistic tone worked as well for the Green Arrow as it did for Batman. Surprisingly, 8 years later, Oliver Queen was interacting with superheroes, time travel. Sorry if my screen audio glitched out for you guys. My screen went black. I'll reread this again. Surprisingly, 8 years later, Oliver Queen was interacting with superheroes, time travel, multiverse, magic, and aliens regularly, showing that this approach does not need to be an obstacle. So then how Arrow evolved into a fantastical world. For those who might have stopped watching Arrow after season 1 and then watched the show during its final season, it must have been shocking to see how most of the universe around Oliver Queen has changed. However, Arrow's journey from a realistic Batman Begins like world to an anchor of comic accurate DC universe named Arrowverse made a lot of sense. Arrow's change was not abrupt, but rather slowly built, starting with season 2. For example, Slade Wilson's storyline introduced the Mirakuru, Arrow's version of Marvel Super Soldier Serum. I mean, yeah, you can say that part was unrealistic or supernatural, but compared to those seasons following season 2, the first 2 seasons were the most realistic. Debatably. Anyways. The concept of the super soldiers was then expanded when their rival Barry Allen, the scientist who would become the Flash. With DC planning a Flash TV show in the form of the Arrow spin-off, Arrow had to open itself to the idea of superpowers to metahumans. Arrow Season 2, Episode 8, The Scientist, ended with Barry Allen suffering the accident that would grant him the Flash superpowers. From then on, Arrow became part of a larger universe that would later be known as Arrowverse. Arrowverse Season 2 still kept some of the previous season's realism, which is what I pretty much just said. But by Season 3, it was already too difficult to maintain the show's early tone, now that Barry Allen was fighting metahumans weekly on The Flash. And that is true. I can see that. The regular crossovers between Stephen Amell's Green Arrow and Grant Gustin's Flash by themselves would be enough to completely change Arrow's universe. If Oliver Queen was able to fight the Flash and other metahumans, then Green Arrow could face most DC villains on his show, whether they were realistic or not. Arrow Season 3 introduced Ra's al Ghul, and unlike Batman Begins, the DC villain had a supernatural side to his story. Damien Darhk and his magic John Constantine, the effects of Flashpoint, and multiversal Team Arrow doppelgangers are just some of the examples of other fantastical elements that Arrow incorporated at some point. That's true. How Arrow's tone change can inspire the Batman. As significant as Arrow's tone change was, it happened in an organic way that never broke the show's universe. That is how Matt Reeves could incorporate the more fantastical side of Batman into the Batman universe, the Batverse, I guess. Um, Slowly adding more sci-fi concepts while never breaking the sense of realism so well established by the first movie. Although the Batman 2 and the other sequels could still focus on grounded villains such as the Joker and the Court of Owls, Batman's rogue gallery is full of sci-fi characters that rarely get a chance to live that rarely gets a chance in live action movies. Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy, both of which only appeared in the 1997's Batman and Robin, are great examples. True. For example, Clayface, one of Batman's most intriguing villains, had never been featured in a live-action Batman. Many hoped to see Clayface in the Batman 2 or other sequels, yet such a character only works in a universe that is opened to Batman's fantastical side. For the reason, introducing villains like Clayface, Mr. Freeze, and Poison Ivy in the Batman 2 or 3 can lead into a larger, more comic-accurate Batman universe. Similar to Arrow, the Batman sequel can first expand on the world with small sci-fi concepts, such as Mr. Freeze's ice gun, or only then incorporate elements like Ra's al Ghul's Lazarus Pit or Poison Ivy's powers. I have to agree. We could get. I think if the Batman 2, assuming that happens, because like under the new ownership of DC, a lot of projects has been getting canceled as of recent. But I think that yeah, they're right. Mr. Freeze could be like that subtle introduction into more sci-fi while keeping it somewhat realistic. So that way, assuming there's Batman 3, we could get like Clayface. Like maybe we could get the Joker and Mr. Freeze teaming up, and then the Batman 3 being like a Clayface villain. I mean, Clayface being the villain of the Batman 3. So that way, like, fans like us, or fans, won't be too surprised saying that the first one was realistic, and now we change from a realistic tone to a more sci-fi tone. Just like that. It can be subtle. And, like, Mr. Freeze is the best person or villain to have us get kind of ease into that whole subtle change to from completely realistic to somewhat realistic to sci-fi, if that makes sense. Anyways, what do you guys think about this article? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'm going to shut the hell up and let you guys tell me what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching this video. Love you all. Have a wonderful day. Be kind to one another, and I'll talk to you fellow mates later.